great stuff going on over at BangTheBook.com. NHL is back, which means Parker Michaels is back. We've got situational betting articles, tons of stuff for you to check out over there at the website. Make sure you head on over there and do that. Also, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB200 is the promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the sportsbook, up to $500. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino as well, up to $500. At BetDSI, it's only a game until you bet it. Of course, over at BangTheBook.com as well, our free pick contests going on. Cash prizes available for those. You can join the Daily Streaker at any time, but with a new month coming up here, those monthly contests will reset and give you a good opportunity to win some cash prizes in those. All right, short and sweet intro here today because we've got Brad Powers from Brad Powers Sports on the line. We're going to do all of the remaining bowl games if we can. Brad, how's it going today, man? All right, seem to be having some issues with the switchboard here. Hopefully we can get Brad on the line in a second. Of course, it's not like we've got a ton to try and talk about here on today's show or anything. But, Brad, how's it going, man?
Man, it's going well. How are you doing on this fine Thursday morning?
I'm doing well, buddy. Apologies there for the little bit of a delay. But let's go ahead and dive in. And let's start by talking about how great that Cheez-It Bowl was last night.
Yeah, I only watched a little bit of it. That was not good football, to say the least. But, unless you like defense and unless you had an under ticket, you had to feel pretty good about yourself. But, that was one that didn't necessarily progress the sport too much into the future. Hopefully we don't see too many more of those.
Yeah, that's one of those games where you get the argument of there are too many bowl games. And overall, I disagree, but maybe in the case of that game last night, certainly could have been the case. But most of the games that we're going to talk about here today should be very, very good games as we're getting into some of the real quality teams here in college football. Let's start Friday afternoon, Music City Bowl in Nashville, Auburn and Purdue. Auburn was a 4-point favorite at open. A lot of threes minus $1.15 out there now.
Yeah, and I agree with the line move. I think just Purdue, generally speaking, is more excited to be there. Why? First and foremost, their head coach, Jeff Brown, decided to stay there in West Lafayette instead of going back to his alma mater at Louisville. So I think those players are relatively excited. Purdue just being in any bowl game when this was a doormat of the Big Ten just a couple years ago before Jeff Brown took over. Auburn, I got to think when they set off their expectations preseason, I got to think a bowl game in Nashville, Tennessee against Purdue wasn't high on their priority list. So Purdue more excited. I lean Purdue. I actually lean the over more than anything. I do think Gus Malzahn, since he's taken over the play calling, I'll have a little bit of a different. He better because he's on the hot seat this entire calendar year, starting with this bowl game. On top of that, you look at a Purdue pass defense is bottom 10 in the country. But on the flip side, David Blau has put up 300-plus passing yards in 8 of his last 10 games. I lean with the over as well as Purdue.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty smart way to look there in that game. I do think Nick Holt is a phenomenal defensive coordinator for Purdue. And, something that stood out to me a little bit, obviously the game that kept Ohio State out of the college football playoff was that loss to Purdue. There was nothing fluky about that game. I thought Purdue was almost as fast as Ohio State in some facets of that game. So maybe the SEC speed here for Auburn could be contained a little bit. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But really excited to watch that one here on Friday afternoon. Camping World Bowl down in Orlando. West Virginia opened a 7.5-point favorite. Will Greer said, I'm going to sit out. I'm going to prep for the NFL draft. And this line moved a ton. Now we're up to Syracuse -2. A lot of guys sitting this game out, whether they're prepping for the NFL or just injured.
Yeah, I lean towards the Syracuse side here, although them missing a couple of defensive linemen, that news broke a couple days ago, in case you missed it, including one of the top sack men in the ACC. That's a little bit concerning, but I just look at it that Syracuse, again, and it's going to be almost a broken record here, more excited to be there. Why? This is their first bowl game since 2013. They haven't won 10 games in a season since 2001. Their fan base, Syracuse's fan base sold out their allotment of tickets. They can't even sell out the Carrier Dome most weeks. So I think generally speaking, they're excited to be there. West Virginia, we don't know for sure, but the players, at least their best players, are kind of tipping their cap by sitting this one out. Dana Holgerson's a terrible bowl coach. I just think he's overrated generally speaking, but he's failed to cover in 5 straight bowl games. I'll take the Orange here, even though the line's flipped to them being favored. As long as they're not laying 3, I'll take the Orange here minus the points.
I like Syracuse here, too. And something else about this game, with Will Grier leaving, with those wide receivers leaving for West Virginia, too, it's hardly coincidence that Dana Holgerson expressed his interest in the Texas Tech job. I mean, maybe he sees the writing on the wall here in Morgantown with the up-and-coming offensive players that he has. So maybe that's a factor in this game, too, with those guys taking more of the spotlight for the Mountaineers.
Oh, that's an excellent point. And you're right. He did flirt with that job, and Texas Tech said no thanks. So that kind of tells you that Dana Holgerson's not necessarily looked in the best of light, even though he's had relatively decent success at West Virginia. That's another point that would be, in my opinion, favoring the Orange here.
All right, let's go to the Alamo Bowl. This one, Iowa State, Washington State. Really, really intrigued by this game and also intrigued by the line move. Washington State was a 5-point favorite, and you can find a 2.5, even a 2.5 flat at Bet Online and Heritage for this game. A lot of Iowa State money coming in, Brad.
Yeah, and also at Westgate, sometimes when they take a position, they're one of the sharper books here in town in Vegas. So I agree with the line move in this particular case. I mean, to me, it's more of a fade against Mike Leach. I mean, he's 1-7 against the spread in his last 8 bowl games. That's not a good look. And why is he struggling in bowl games? Well, I mean, you get an entire month of prep for his quirky offense. I don't think it's going to be so quirky for Iowa State. They've already faced, high-powered spread offenses like Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Texas Tech. What Iowa State do in those games against those top 20 offenses, they covered all 4 of those games. They won 3 of them outright. You look at Washington State, I mean, they're thinking possible college football playoff berth. They blew the game in the Apple Cup against Washington. They didn't get a New Year's Six bid, even though they won 10 games. They got passed up over SEC teams like LSU and Florida, who only won 9 games. Iowa State, speaking of 9 games, they're trying to win 9 for the first time since 2000. I lean with the Cyclones here.
Yeah, for Washington State, the last 3 years for Mike Leach's teams, 20 points, 17 points, and 12 points. So not really what you would expect there from the Cougars. No, not at all. And also, too, Matt Campbell's a hell of a coach.
Yeah, and I mean, defensively, I get it. The Big 12 is known for its offense, but if there's 2 teams that play defense, there's a couple teams that play defense, but I would definitely put Iowa State in one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in the Big 12 the last couple of years. So I don't think they hold Washington State under 20, but I definitely think that they hold Washington State well below their average. And the total sitting there in the mid-50s says that this game is going to be played more towards Iowa State's side.
All right, let's go to Saturday here. Interesting game at the top of the board. It's not the first one chronologically, but it's the first one by rotation number. Arkansas State and Nevada in Tucson for the Arizona Bowl. I think it's the Nova Home Loans Arizona Bowl. Arkansas State open to pick. They're a 1.5-point favorite out there. What do you think about this largely forgotten Saturday game?
I disagree with the line move, which isn't usually the case when it comes to bowl action. I get it. Nevada's one of their top wide receivers is going to transfer out, so that's a little bit of concern. But I think the market threw Nevada a little bit too much in the trash after the UNLV game where they blew that 23-0 lead. I mean, otherwise, if they don't blow the lead there, they come in this bowl game with 5 straight wins. Arkansas State, to me, was disappointing, even though they closed the season with 4 straight wins to make their record look respectable. Nevada's playing in more of their, more of their part of the country as far as regionally speaking. Arkansas State doesn't play in the state of Arizona too often. So playing closer to home for Nevada, even though it's still a plane trip there. Arkansas State's lost 3 of their last 4 bowl games. I disagree. As far as this is one where I've got to play my power ratings, and I think wrong team favorite here. I have Nevada by 1.
Yeah, this was my biggest overlay of the season, or of the bowl season in terms of power ratings here. I like Nevada a lot in this spot. Yeah, McLean Mannix leaving doesn't really help, but also this game in Tucson played in a little bit of altitude, so that should help the Wolfpack too, because Arkansas State just doesn't play in it. I get it. Appalachian State looked good, Troy looked good, Georgia Southern won their bowl game, Louisiana gave it a good effort, but Arkansas State couldn't even win their division in the Sun Belt, and their division was terrible. So I mean, they really underachieved this year. I don't think they're that good of a team.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I was lining up to bet Arkansas State over their season win total at 8.5. I thought they'd be favored in every single game this year, with the exception of the Alabama game. They ended up being a dog at home to App State. App State, obviously far exceeded expectations. Were a dog against Tulsa as well, but still ended up, even though they underachieved, were favored in 9 of their games. I mean, I thought the Lafayette game was disappointing for them. Losing at Georgia Southern is disappointing. Yeah, I didn't like what I saw from Arkansas State nearly all the season. And I get it, they won their last 4 games, but who in the hell did they beat? South Alabama, Coastal Carolina, UL Monroe, Texas State. None of those teams are in a bowl game. So, I think Nevada played the tougher schedule. I just think they're the better team. Wrong team favored. They'll probably use Nevada in the Golden Nugget contest when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell you, we took them in it. So, hopefully that's one that does wind up being a winner for both of us. And by the way, you're 4th in that, and kudos to you, man, for a hell of a run here, really the entire season in NFL and college football. But also, you've been just on fire in the Nugget, and I'm certainly hoping for the best for you here this weekend in that. Let's go to the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, Florida, Michigan. Michigan, 6-point favorite here. Man, I just look at this game, and I hate everything about this game. I have no interest in this game at all. What about you?
I took a position on Florida, and now it doesn't do the listeners any good to say, hey, I got a Florida plus 7.5 ticket in my pocket, and now the line's 6. But I'll give a little credit to my dad, believe it or not. And I know that sounds pretty, not nationally respected, but sometimes when you have people that are, he's back home in Ohio, he's reading the message boards, and he's subscribed to all those Rivals and 247 sites. And, man, like 2 weeks ago, he told me some inside people said, hey, Michigan's going to be sitting not only Rashawn Gary at the time that we knew, but several other starters were also going to sit out. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, Dad. I don't see that anywhere in the marketplace. I mean, I don't believe you whatsoever. And he was naming off players, running back, Devin Bush. I'm like, I don't see that anywhere, so I don't believe you. But lo and behold, 2 weeks later, all those players end up sitting out. So for once, I trusted my dad a little bit there and took the 7.5, and I'll tip the cap to him. I just think Florida's more excited to be there. Why? They're 4-7 last year. They got a chance to win 10 games first year under Dan Mullen. Michigan's 1 game away from going to the college football playoff. They had taken care of Northwestern had they beaten the Buckeyes. If it doesn't matter for captains like Karan Higdon and Devin Bush, does it matter for the entire team? I don't think so. I'll take the Gators, even though they traditionally struggle with Michigan every time they play them. I'll take them plus the 6, although obviously some value lost there a little bit.
I like it. I like. First of all, shout out to your dad for that for sure. The thing that scares me is I don't know how Florida scores. I mean, Florida's had trouble all year scoring points. Maybe having Dan Mullen's a big help. I mean, Dan Mullen is a fantastic head coach, and I don't think that Harbaugh is much of a head coach as we've really seen in the Ohio State rivalry. The thing that's interesting to me here is Harbaugh actually going to leave for the NFL? And I mean, is that something that maybe the players kind of wonder about too? Like, I can't see it, but is that a distraction?
I could be. I don't know why he would. Urban Meyer's gone. I mean, he just signed his best recruiting class that he's had. I don't get that, but I guess you start looking at how long he's got an expiration date, no question about that. When you look at how long he lasted at San Diego and Stanford and San Francisco, and now it's year 4 here. That's about as long as he lasts. I wouldn't be overly stunned, but as far as business sense, I mean, he's making more than $7 million a year at Michigan at your alma mater, and now Urban Meyer's gone. I would think he'd have unfinished business there at Michigan. I guess it's a little bit of a distraction, but I just don't get it. He makes that move. I guess it'd have to be a really good job in the NFL, but I'd stay in college. I mean, you can have a longer coaching career in college, and now with what they're paying you, you can almost make as much money.
I'm hoping he stays because I have to think that if he goes, I mean, he's signing some very good classes. The problem is he's not really maximizing his talent. Maybe now he can do it, next year with Shea Patterson back again. But they would get an upgrade. I mean, they would have to get an upgrade at this point, right? I mean, the program is in such good shape from a talent standpoint. It would have to be an upgrade to Harbaugh, whoever they hired. An upgrade from Harbaugh? Yeah, I would think so. If they hired somebody new, it would have to be. Oh, I don't believe that. I don't know why people put Michigan in this class like there's some perennial national title contender. I mean, they won half a national title since 1948. I mean, they're a good, solid program that's one of the best in the Big Ten. But nationally speaking, I mean, it's never been about national titles and stuff for Michigan. I mean, Bo Schembechler never won a title. They call him the ringless hand. Only went 2-8 in Rose Bowls. They're not the same level as Ohio State. So I think Harbaugh's as good of a coach as they've ever had there in the last 60, 70 years. So I don't think they can get an upgrade over Harbaugh. It's just, to me, it's a program that gets treatment like a top 5, and they're just not. If you look at historically speaking, at least the last 70 years in the college football realm. All right, let's go to the Belk Bowl then. We'll go down to Charlotte, game 251, 252, South Carolina and Virginia. This number opens South Carolina -6. It's in that dead zone now between 4 and 6. A lot of 5s out there in the market. What do you think about this game, Brad? Yeah, I don't have a strong feel for this one. Obviously, Deebo Samuel, the wide receiver of South Carolina, he's going to sit that one out, focus on the NFL draft. That hurts them a little bit, but they got some other talented guys there. Edwards on the outside, and I thought Bentley had his best game of his entire career in his final game against Clemson in the last game of the regular season. I also like Bryce Perkins, the quarterback for Virginia. Only 2 players in college football ran for more than 800 yards and threw for more than 2,400 yards. That's Kyler Murray and Bryce Perkins, believe it or not, for Virginia. To me, I think South Carolina had the crowd edge. And one thing one of the handicapping tools, because you got so much time to dive into these games as far as bowls, I like to look at head-to-head as far as conferences. And the SEC went a perfect 7-0 against the spread against the ACC this year. Just a very slight lean on South Carolina -5. All right, we'll revisit that stat here with one of the games coming up on New Year's Eve, but let's go to the college football playoff semifinal. We'll go to Oklahoma and Alabama here in the Orange Bowl. This is the second game, but it's the first one by rotation number, game 253, 254. Alabama still a 14-point favorite. Total on this game has come down into the 76 or 77 range out there. Was up in the 80s previously. What do you think, Brad? And anything swinging one way or another for you here? Yeah, I lean Alabama for me. The total coming down says that, Alabama, I mean, it's not going to be a shootout. Even though when the total's coming down, you're laying a hefty number. Usually that would benefit the underdog. I don't think that's the case here. Obviously, Alabama deserves to be favored because of one side of the football, that being the significant defensive edge that they have over the Sooners. And plus, you look at Hollywood Brown. He's the wide receiver for Oklahoma. He's their deep threat, can take the top off the defense. He's practicing. It looks like he's going to play, but is he going to be 100%? If he's not, then Alabama can probably put an extra guy up to spy Kyler Murray. I just trust Alabama in these types of games when they have a month to prep. I mean, outside of the semifinal against the Buckeyes, they've been relatively dominant in these semifinals. I mean, easy win and cover last year against Clemson. Beat Washington by 17, beat Michigan State by 38. I'll roll Tide here. It's not one of my favorite picks, but I'll lay the 14. Does Oklahoma's success against Georgia's defense last year mean anything to you in this game? Ooh, I mean, that's a good call there, and that's what gives me a little bit of pause. But because Georgia was really good defensively. That does give me pause, and that would be why I'm not having a big bet on Alabama. And I do think Alabama's better equipped to stopping a guy like Kyler Murray than what they were, say, 5 years ago. Why? Because they see a dual-threat quarterback each and every week in practice in Tua Tagovailoa. So I'll say that. But, yeah, that does give me some pause that Oklahoma against a vaunted SEC defense put up 48 last year. No question about it. All right, so let's go to the other semifinal, 255, 256, Notre Dame, Clemson. It's been a relatively steady stream of Clemson money. We haven't seen a whole lot of sharp involvement anyway on Notre Dame as of yet to drive this number back down. Some places open 10.5, some places open 11. We're sitting 12.5 or 13 right now. Obviously, Clemson with some distractions now and without Dexter Lawrence in all likelihood for this game. Notre Dame, Brandon Wimbush is transferring, so if Ian Book gets hurt, who knows what the hell happens there. What do you think about this one, Brad?
Yeah, Wimbush should still be the backup. He's still with the team. Okay. He's not leaving until after the college football playoffs over, so they would still have Wimbush at quarterback. He's still there. We did see a little bit of money on Notre Dame because it got as high as 13.5. And a few days ago, prior to the suspension announcement for Dexter Lawrence, Notre Dame took a little bit of money. I'm going to lean with Notre Dame, believe it or not, in this one. I hear too much of the media narrative talking about 2012. I just don't get that at all. To talk about a game from 6 years ago, I mean, that just doesn't move the needle at all for me. If you want to talk about games from past years, let's talk about the last time these two teams played 3 years ago. Notre Dame would have easily covered the current number. Let's talk about Notre Dame against an SEC team last year, beat LSU as far as, talking about teams from the South and having a significant speed advantage. Notre Dame beats LSU in the bowl game and loses by a point against a Georgia team that almost won the national title. So I don't get to talk about Notre Dame. The stage is too big, and they're going to get killed like they did 6 years ago in the title game. I don't see that. Dexter Lawrence is a loss because if there was one significant edge Clemson had, it was at the line of scrimmage. Now, they still got guys like Christian Wilkins and Cleveland Farrell and Austin Bryant on the outside. And I still think they have the edge over Notre Dame's offensive line, but missing a 350-pound defensive tackle that's going to go in the top 15 of the NFL draft, that is a loss, and I think he's worth about 0.5 point. And I'm a little bit worried about Clemson's defense. I mean, the ACC sucked this year. I think there's no bones about that. When they stepped out and played a couple of SEC teams, A&M, South Carolina, neither one of those two teams are, I would say great offensively. They're good. But A&M put up 500 yards. South Carolina put up 600 yards. I think Notre Dame can have some success down the field in the pass game as long as Ian Book's getting protected. I'll take the Fighting Irish here plus the points.
Obviously, we've got two double-digit favorites here, so anything other than Alabama versus Clemson would be a surprise. What would your line be for the national championship game between Alabama and Clemson?
Bookmakers line would be 7. I'd probably deal 7 with Alabama. Handicapping line, I would have Alabama 6.5. I'm a little bit higher on Clemson than most, and I think Clemson's got a little bit of an axe to grind with Alabama, but I definitely think that line comes right around a touchdown.
All right, let's go to the last day of 2018 here. 6 bowl games. We'll try to get through these quickly so we got time for Tuesday, January 1st games. Military Bowl, Virginia Tech, Cincinnati. Cincinnati, 5.5-point favorite here in Annapolis.
Yeah, I like Virginia Tech here. One of my favorite picks as far as that day goes. In this one, to me, number one, I got Virginia Tech higher than the marketplace. I mean, I got this game lined at picks, so this is one of my biggest overlays. It's just from a pure power rating, and I've had Virginia Tech power rated higher than the marketplace. I think giving Bud Foster an extra 15 practices, they get a couple guys more healthy, or they can get those younger guys on that defensive side of the ball more up to speed. I think it's a positive. They'll have the crowd edge there in Annapolis, and you look at the last 3 times Virginia Tech entered a bowl game 6-6, they won and covered all 3. I mean, they're trying to avoid their first losing season since 1992, and this is a great trend. And I'll mention again that one of your other guests came up with, Ralph Michaels. You look at teams that won their final game of the regular season. They're 5-6. They win that last game to get the bowl eligibility to get to 6-6. Those teams since 2008 in bowl games now 42-21 against the spread. I think BT is excited to be there. I'll take them plus the points.
All right, we'll go to El Paso for the Sun Bowl game, 259-260. Pitt and Stanford, seeing some Pitt money leak into the marketplace a little bit now, down from 6.5 to 5.5, even a couple stray 4.5s out there as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is people starting to take a look at Stanford's injury report. I mean, they're out without wide receiver Trent Irwin, left tackle Walker Little, right guard Nate Herbig, cornerback Murphy, defensive end Jackson, on top of Bryce Love being out. So walking wounding for Stanford. I really don't have much in this game. I can't make a strong case because I do think Pittsburgh's extremely one-dimensional on the offense side of the ball, and if Stanford can do anything, it would be to stop the run. So I think Stanford's built to stop Pittsburgh's one-dimensional offense, but I'm a little bit worried about that injury report. Kind of a pass for me. If you gave me $20, maybe I'd bet Stanford just because I respect David Shaw more than Pat Narduzzi.
All right, let's go to the Redbox Bowl. Michigan State, Oregon. Oregon, 2.5-point favorite in this one. And, man, this is a perplexing game to me because, as we all know, and as we saw once again yesterday, the Pac-12 is awful in bowl games. And Oregon right now, 2.5-point favorite against Sparty. Sparty is not good, but, I mean, they're pretty good in an underdog role usually.
Yeah, they are. And you look at and good in bowl games. Mark D'Antonio's on a 5-1 straight up and against the spread run in bowl games. Only loss was to Alabama when they were significantly outclassed as a double-digit underdog. I think significant advantage for D'Antonio over Mario Cristobal. Although Cristobal's recruiting well, I mean, whether it be freshmen coming in or recruiting his quarterback Justin Herbert to come back for another season. A lot of excitement around the Oregon program, but this is the type of game back against the wall that Michigan State's thrived in the last decade under Mark D'Antonio. Much better defense, played a tougher schedule. I'll take Sparty here plus the points.
You taking the points, or would you gamble on the money line there?
Oh, Dad, 2.5, you take the money line. So, and we've seen that in bowl games. I mean, hell, if you're going to bet the dog in a bowl game, forget the point spread, just bet on the money line. You'll come, at least in the last 2 years, you'll come out way far ahead than just betting them against the spread. Last year, 16 of the 19 underdogs that covered won the game outright, and I think this year, of the 5 underdogs that have covered, I think 4 of them won outright.
All right, let's go to the Liberty Bowl here. Missouri, Oklahoma State. Missouri, 8-point favorite in this one against Mike Gundy and the Magnificent Mullet.
Yeah, I don't have much on this one. Just not a good field. Oklahoma State's been both teams have been hot and cold all year. Not sure if I trust Missouri. I mean, we saw this story last year where they closed the season really strong and then played a Big 12 team in a bowl game and laid an egg against Texas. But on the flip side, I mean, Oklahoma State's a team that, yeah, good for them. I mean, they can get up and beat Texas and West Virginia and nearly beat Oklahoma, but then get blown out by Texas Tech and Kansas State, losing road games. Baylor, TCU is a favorite. I mean, I trust Gundy a little bit more than Barry Odom, but with Justice Hill out, one of their best offensive linemen out, that's not a little bit of concern for me. Just a very slight lean on under 74.5. That's a high total for a bowl game when Oklahoma State's missing some key players on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, you mentioned Virginia Tech trying to keep a streak of winning seasons alive. Oklahoma State's had 12 winning seasons in a row. Need a win here. Need an outright upset in this one. We'll see if the players, sort of respond to that type of angle. But, like you said, I mean, Oklahoma State, they're so hit or miss this year. And it's one of those things, too, where Taylor Cornelius can make a lot of throws and also misses a ton of throws. And that's something that Gundy really hasn't had to deal with for a while. So that does concern me a little bit here with the Cowboys in that one. How about the Holiday Bowl? Northwestern and Utah. Utah's a touchdown favorite out in San Diego.
Yeah, and I mean, Kyle Whittingham's been one of the best bowl coaches out there. I mean, he's 10-1. I don't know why they give credit to Urban Meyer and Kyle Whittingham for that Fiesta Bowl from 15 years ago. I don't get that. It's either one or the other. You can't give 2 wins to both coaches. I mean, Urban Meyer was still there, so you got to give it to them. So whenever I'm sorry, I'm going off on a little rant. We're tight on time, but it just bothers me that a lot of people are crediting Kyle Whittingham with an 11-1 bowl market. It's not true. I remember the game. I remember the situation. Tyler Huntley, more pertinent to this game and this season, the Utah quarterback, he missed the final 4 games. Looks like he's going to come back and play, maybe not start. Although Utah on the negative side, their leading wide receiver, Covey, is going to sit this one out. Push comes to shove, even though Whittingham's really good in bowl games, I'm going to lean on the Northwestern side getting points. The dog in Northwestern games this year, the only time the dog didn't cover in a Northwestern game this year was the Big Ten championship game against the Buckeyes, and Northwestern was in that in the fourth quarter. So lower scoring game. Both teams are built fundamentally sound. I'll take Northwestern plus the touchdown.
Now, a stat that you mentioned when we talked about South Carolina and Virginia, how well the SEC has done against the ACC this year, that's going on in the Gator Bowl. NC State, Texas A&M up to a touchdown favorite now where they opened in the 4.5 range.
Yeah, and some of it, I mean, NC State's top wide receiver, Kelvin Harmon's out. Their top linebacker, Jermaine Pratt's out. He's their leading tackler. That's concerning. Ryan Finley's final game, I mean, he's had a great career there at NC State. The transfer from Boise has done really well. But, man, if I'm buying stock in a program in college football in the next 5 years, I'm looking for the most bang for my buck. I think I'd draft Nebraska number 1. I think I'd draft Texas A&M, too. I think it's a team much better than their 8-4 record indicates. Only losses to number 1 Alabama, number 2 Clemson. Aggies covered both of those games. Decent quarterback in Kellen Mond. He can be a little shaky at times, but he's athletic, dual threat. Williams and running backs, I think the number 3 rusher in the country. And I think in a factor here, not only you look at the SEC against the ACC, but how about Jimbo Fisher and Mike Elko, who was the defensive coordinator? They prepped for NC State last year while Fisher was at Florida State and Elko was at Notre Dame. So I'll take the Aggies here -7.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a strong angle there. And correct me if I'm wrong, Elko was at Wake Forest too, so it's not like, he's a stranger to NC State. I mean, that certainly helps here. I mean, Florida State playing NC State every year, and then Elko's seeing the Wolfpack quite a bit too, especially here during the Dave Doran years. I think it's a really strong angle there from you. All right, let's go to Tuesday as we kick off 2019 with the Outback Bowl. Iowa, Mississippi State, the Bulldogs laying 7 here in this one.
Yeah, I think both teams, I mean, much better as far as the power rating goes than their 8-4 records indicate. Both teams similar. I mean, their strength is on the defense side of the ball. I mean, I don't think people are giving enough credit to Mississippi State's defense. Number 1 in the country in scoring defense this year. And you really thought Joe Moorhead would have the biggest impact on the offense side of the ball. Not necessarily been the case. Iowa's, just as good, slightly behind Mississippi State. I mean, they're number 7 as far as total defense, number 11 in scoring defense, lower scoring game. Give me Iowa +7. It's a little bit of a concern that Iowa hasn't had great success against SEC teams, although Ferentz is 9-6 against the spread in bowl games. It's Moorhead's first. I think that little bit of an advantage there gives me a slight lean on the Hawkeyes.
271, 272, the Citrus Bowl. Penn State, 6.5-point favorites against Kentucky.
I'm going to lean with the Nittany Lions. I just think, generally speaking, Kentucky's a little overrated. Team wasn't top 20 in the AP poll and the college football playoff. I only have number 36 in my power ratings, ranking them 1 through 130. And it's a team that only covered 2 of their last 7 games. I think Penn State can stack the line of scrimmage, focus in on Benny Snell. You've seen Penn State against run-heavy offenses this year, Pitt, Wisconsin, Maryland. Penn State won and covered all 3 of those games. They only allowed 6 points per game in those. So I think Penn State will have success on the defense side of the ball, and offensively, Trace McSorley's final game, I think he'll go out a winner, and I think they'll go out a winner when it comes to the pocketbook. I'll take the Nittany Lions.
I like Penn State, too. This is one of my stronger bowl plays as well. I mean, I've been down on Kentucky all year, as everybody knows that listens to this show. And, Kentucky is in the 38 range for me, too. So you and I are on the same wavelength there with them. And Penn State, too. They kind of found Miles Sanders as the year went along. And that's a big help for Trace McSorley because he didn't have much on the outside with all the wide receivers they lost last year. Having a good running back is a big help. And I think Sanders really came on in the second part of the year, and maybe that helps Penn State going forward. I don't know.
Oh, there's no question about it, and they've recruited it exceptionally well. And they'll miss McSorley, but, I mean, they got another guy there behind there that's going to be pretty damn good. So I don't think James Franklin's going anywhere. I think he's slightly overrated. I don't think he's an elite coach, but he's still a very good one. And as far as the talent, it's coming in there. I mean, Penn State's not going anywhere, folks, if you're looking for them to take a step back.
All right, the Fiesta Bowl. LSU, UCF. LSU, a 7.5-point favorite here for this one. Is this the game that UCF finally loses?
Yeah, I do think that. I mean, 7.5 is a tough number to lay it. But I would lean LSU. I'm just significant advantage. I mean, LSU's run game against the UCF run defense. I mean, they have allowed 290 rushing yards per game in their last 5. I get it. Dario Max looked good in the AAC championship game to lead that come-from-behind win over Memphis, but still nowhere near as good as Mackenzie Milton at quarterback for UCF. Unlike Auburn last year, I think LSU will take them a little bit more serious, although they got a couple players sitting out. That's a little bit of a worry, including the cornerback Greedy Williams for LSU. But I just think LSU's a little bit more motivated than what UCF saw last year in Auburn. And obviously without their quarterback, I think it'll be a little bit of a different story. I'll take the Tigers here minus the points, even though the market, I know most handicappers, at least from what I'm reading, is on UCF, although the bettors are saying differently as far as the sharps. They're more on the LSU side.
Let's go to the Rose Bowl, 275, 276, Washington and Ohio State. The Buckeyes, 6.5 is the consensus number out there. Obviously, there are some 7s at some of the more public shops as well. What do you think about this game?
I love the Buckeyes. I know it's a square pick, and I'm going to be against the Sharps. But I mean, if you watch the games, Washington just doesn't have enough. Jake Browning is actually, I think he's regressed as a quarterback, and I just don't think he can beat the Buckeyes over the top. So he doesn't scare me on that side of the ball. I think Washington's at a significant talent disadvantage. We've seen it show up in some of the bigger games the last couple of years. Alabama game. Penn State last year in the Fiesta Bowl, Auburn this year. I mean, Peterson's a great coach, but I think that if the Buckeyes are properly motivated, you saw what they did to Michigan, and I think Michigan's superior to Washington. Maybe not as far as the coaching staff goes, but then when it comes to player personnel, they are. Myers 11-3 in bowl games. It's his final one. I mean, the Buckeyes should be amped up. It's only their third Rose Bowl game in 35 years. They'll have the crowd edge. When the game is priced good for the Buckeyes since 2005, when they're laying less than 7 points or they're in the underdog role, they're 34-17 against the number. So small favorite or at least a reasonable favorite or an underdog, Buckeyes are a strong pick. Yeah, I know it's square, but I'm going to take the Buckeyes. I have some of my biggest bets of the year on the Buckeyes in this game. And finally, Pac-12 sucks. I mean, just flat out sucks. They're now 2-15 against the spread in bowl games last 3+ seasons, 0-2 this year. Pac-12 sucks. I can't say it any more clearly than that. I'll take the Buckeyes. They roll, win by double digits.
All right, that sounds good to me. Sounds like a good way for this Buckeyes fan to kick off 2019. One more bowl game to hit here. That is the Sugar Bowl, Texas and Georgia. Georgia, anywhere from a 12 to a 13-point favorite in this one against Tom Herman, who, as we all know, phenomenal in the underdog role.
Yeah, but that's starting to get priced into it. Didn't cover against Oklahoma. But I'll still lean the Texas side just because it comes down to me motivation. Georgia is a quarter away from playing in the college football playoff, blow the game against Alabama yet again, and now they're relegated to play a 9-4 Texas team. So I'm not sure they're fully motivated. Texas should be excited. I thought they, relatively speaking, overachieved this year, getting to the Big 12 championship game, although that was a little bit of a disappointment there against Oklahoma. That game was close, though. It was tied fourth quarter. And now you're playing in the Sugar Bowl. Herman's 12-2 against the number as a head coach in the dog roll, 23-2. And you go back to his assistant days at the Buckeyes and Iowa State. Ellinger's a very solid quarterback who should be healthy. His shoulder is bothering him at the end of the year. So I'll hook 'em horns here plus the big number.
All right. Well, we hit all the college bowl games that I wanted to, so I'm very, very happy about that. Let's sum up this week in the NFL very quickly. What is your plan of attack?
That's a great point. Obviously motivation and players rested. This isn't 2005 when it comes to the world of handicap. A lot of this is already priced in the numbers. So when you see the Giants favored by 6, it's already, taking into consideration that Dallas is likely to rest players. I pick my spots. I probably fewer bets than normal when it comes to a typical NFL week for me, but I like some picks. I know Buffalo just took some money in the marketplace today. I agree with that. I don't think Miami shows up when the temperature is going to be in the 20s, and Buffalo is playing with revenge from a game they dominated, but somehow anywhere but the scoreboard when it came to the Dolphins earlier this year. So I'll pick my spots and probably only bet a few games. Probably only bet a few when it comes to the Nugget contest. Cautionary, but I'm not like, some people that say, hey, you just can't bet and take the week off in the NFL. I still think there's some value. And I'll probably fade a line mover too. I see Chicago's getting some money in the marketplace. I'll wait and see if that number can go to 4 at most shops. I kind of like the Vikings there.
Is this a week where, you still bet your standard amounts, or do you sort of, put in some personal hedging, so to speak, by cutting down your unit size a little bit?
I get a little more exotic. Believe it. You're right. I probably don't bet as much overall as far as the unit size goes. But I start getting a little exotic and some in-game wagering. So, if Kansas City is crushing, and obviously all of this depends on how the game's going, but if they're crushing Oakland at the start, then maybe I wager a little bit in-game with Denver, because obviously that would impact the Chargers, knowing that they can't clinch the AFC West if Kansas City wins. So maybe a little bit more of, I would say, parlay action in some games, and a little more exotic betting, and a little bit more in-game live betting, especially in the second half of some of these games. The NFL's done a tremendous job compared to 10 years ago. They really don't give you a lot of opportunity if certain teams win at 1 o'clock. The 1 o'clock window, you can play against some other teams at 4 o'clock. They pretty much eliminated that from the marketplace.
Brad Powers, professional handicapper over at BradPowersSports.com. What's going on over there right now, man?
Yeah, I talk about it each and every week. Why the hell not? If you bet my best bets all year long, NFL or college, every single pick, I'm not, excluding, the month of September, or, excluding, teams with left-handed quarterbacks, west of the Mississippi. Every single pick this year, if you bet on best bets, 72 and 42, 63%, and we'll take a bigger game sample size. How about 4 years and 600-plus games, 56.5% all-time are those best bets over the last 4 years. It's the newsletter. You get a game write-up on all remaining bowl games. You get all playoff action, Week 17 in the NFL, best bets, power ratings, computer projected lines, trends of the week, logs, you name it, it's in there. $50. It's actually $49 for the rest of the season, all the way through the Super Bowl. Go to BradPowerSports.com. It's called the Powers Picks newsletter.
And I guess one last thing I'll ask you here, since we've wrapped up the football portion of the show, that transition to college basketball, what's that looking like for you right now?
A little slow, to be perfectly frank. I fully get involved right after the new year. But right now, if you ask me, hey, how's UTEP basketball doing right now, I'll be perfectly frank, I don't have a clue. So I really get involved come right after New Year's Day. It's a little bit of a slow start for me, but we're usually up and running by the end of the month as far as January goes, and we really know what the hell we're doing when it really matters come March.
Well, and that's the thing. It may not be a bad thing to jump in at this point in time, because you get a lot of noise from the non-conference portion of the season. Now with conference play, it's maybe not a bad time for somebody like you who reads the market so well to start getting involved.
That's a great point, and that's exactly what I do. And where do I find my advantages? It's not rocket science. A lot of times when I find my advantages when teams jump into conference play, quite simple. Go to KenPom.com and look at the differences between strength of schedules, because there's a lot of teams that get propped up, with a 10-2, 11-1 record against a relatively weak non-conference schedule against a team that played a much tougher conference schedule. You find value in the marketplace, and I know that's handicapping 101, but, man, it really worked for me last year during the month of January, and that's my game plan at least going into this year.
So you can follow Brad's work on Twitter at Brad Powers and the number 7 and BradPowersSports.com. Brad, appreciate your time as always, sir. Thank you so much, man. Happy New Year. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good, man. Happy New Year to you, my friend. Have a healthy, happy, and wealthy New Year.